Big warm hello to everyone from the data platform WIT team and welcome to United We Tech. This is our new chat interview series with women technologists. We are going to have one person every month to talk to on various tech and non-tech matters. Hopefully you will get to know them better and learn something in the process. My name is Mala and I have with me my new co-lead, Leslie Andrews. And the person we are talking to today is Kate Smith, Program Manager with Microsoft. We will be talking to Kate on SQL Server 2022, the upcoming cool features, and in the process, get to know her a little bit better too. Before we get started, I'll let Leslie and Kate introduce themselves. Leslie, why don't you go first?
Hi, thanks for joining us. My name is Leslie Andrews. I'm co-lead for the data platform Women in Technologies group. We hope you will sign up on our website, www.dataplatformwit.com, and get our monthly newsletter. And we focus on women speakers and bloggers. And we hope you'll sign up. Kate?
Great. Well, hi Mala. Hi, Leslie. Well, thank you so much for having me. Let's see, what can I talk about to introduce myself? I am a lot of things, as most people are. A mom, a theoretician, a PhD dropout, an ex-hockey player. I'm a lot of things, but I've spent the last decade plus of my career really passionate in SQL Server. I've worked as a tester, a developer, and now I'm a PM. And so I've kind of done a lot of different roles in SQL Server, and I just love the product and love the people, and it's great.
Cool.
We're glad you're here.
Right. So are you familiar with the SQL family, the SQL community? Have you been involved with us in any way? Because I haven't attended any of your talks or anything if you've done them.
No, so I mostly, I became a PM right around COVID times.
Right.
I haven't done a lot of public speaking. I've done some blogging, but I've done a lot of public speaking on this topic because there hasn't been a lot of opportunities presented.
So what exactly is your role with Microsoft?
I'm a program manager. So what I do is
on the SQL Server team itself?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yes.
And what does a program manager do?
Well, at Microsoft, that role can be many things, but what I do is there are certain features that I work with customer need and feedback from customers and the developer team to define a feature or a new feature that needs to be added to the product. And then I define the scope of that feature and what the customer experience is going to be. And I work with the developer team to build a plan to deliver that feature. As that work starts to get going and we have opportunities for people to try it out, I interface with customers on a small scale basis to get early feedback. We have sort of limited private previews that we do with certain customers that allows them to test it. I take that feedback, we incorporate it back with the into the product, and then eventually we deliver it, and yeah, and then it's a party, and we keep we find more features to do. That's what we do.
What specifically are the kind of features that you would be on for SQL Server 2022?
So my area of passion and expertise is query processing. So I started out a long time ago, basically testing a component called the Query Optimizer, and then I've actually was a developer on the query processing team for several years, and so now I'm a PM in that space. So I know the space fairly well, and I love it because it's so central to everything that the database does.
Right.
Yeah. It's a very tricky area because it's one where you can make a change that looks like it's going to be good for most people, but then there's some people that it's not good for, and you have to figure out how to that trade-off. There's always trade-offs.
Backward compatibility is really important. So tell us, what are the cool things about query processing that are going to be coming out?
Well, a whole feature, a whole I don't know, bucket load of features for intelligent processing coming out. Super funny. Improvements to our memory grant feedback, improvements to we have a feature called approximate query processing, and so we've added some scope, some capability there. We have a thing called compilation replay, and that takes when you optimize a query, it can be an intensive process, and we can keep part of that sort of compilation of the query to reuse if we similar query patterns in future queries. We have other features for parameter sensitive plans. So parameter sensitive plans are a big challenge because you have one query with one plan, but the parameter values could really drastically impact how the plan executes. And so parameter sensitive plans is coming out. We have a lot of tie-in between the intelligent query processing features and this other feature called Query Store. So we're leveraging Query Store to make memory grant feedback a little bit better. We're using Query Store to introduce a feature called Query Store Hints, which means that sometimes customers use hints to fix sort of a compilation that doesn't match the actual performance that they want or their environment, and store those in the Query Store so that they don't have to keep rehinting, or they don't have to do it next time, put the hint just stays there in the Query Store and it's applied universally. So that's really, really cool.
So does Query Store have the intelligence to not use the hint if it doesn't need it?
No, the hint is used when you tell it to use it. So it just, the Query Store is just going to do what you tell it to do. If you want to apply a hint for a query, it just applies it. I mean,
okay.
Yeah. The hope is that, as we get better and better, the hints will be, maybe you won't need as many hints.
We use a lot of hints where they have. It depends on the environment. It's certainly the complexity of, yeah.
So going back to what you were saying about the parameter sensitive, will that help with parameter sniffing issues in queries?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I understood the correlation between the problem that we have and the solution.
Yeah, it's really, really super cool because parameter sensitive plans actually generate more than one sort of plan skeleton and then decides on the fly which plan skeleton is appropriate for the parameter value you've given it. It's really cool.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, I heard about that at the past summit. Initially it sounded like, oh my gosh, how many plans am I going to have? But then Pedro explained that it's not for every instance. And yeah, so it made sense. Yeah.
Because I will say that I have used, you pass in the parameter and then inside your query, you assign those parameters to a variable, and then it works so much better. And you're just like, but I already declared the parameters. Why do I have to declare them again? And then assign them. So good to know we won't have to do that much longer.
Right. Yeah, that's the hope.
Yes, fingers crossed.
Great.
So I read an article that said that SQL Server 2022 is called the most Azure-enabled version thus far. Could you speak to that? Why is that, if that happens to be true?
Oh, well, I mean, I think it is. I think it's true. And one of the reasons that to say that is that we've got a couple of features that actually you install SQL 22, but then you can connect to Azure and use some of the Azure features in a couple of different ways. One is this sort of link, MI managed instance link. So SQL Azure managed instance links. We've got this bidirectional link. You can actually back up, fail over to Azure, and then fail back over to your install on on your box under on premise, right? We've got this thing called Synapse Link, which means that basically
I know that's so cool. Yeah, that can sense your data changes and sync automatically. That is amazing.
Yes. Yeah. And that'll allow you, if you're running an intense workload on your machine, but this goes up to Synapse, and then you can do your analytics up there without interfering with the workload that you have running locally, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
That sounds super cool.
It is. So I mean, those types of things it really is, and it's very seamless. The way that you can connect to those different services and just turn them on from the tooling support that we have. It's very seamless and very neat. So I think it's pretty cloud connected. Yes.
Could you say more on the bidirectional, the failover with the as a managed instance?
Right. So imagine that you set up basically Azure managed instance to mirror or whatever your on-premise database. You can then connect to that managed instance to do read-only queries. You can use it as a failover or take backups up there. You can use it like almost like a readable secondary.
Oh, cool.
And then if for some reason you need to fail over there, you can actually fail back over, restore back to your on-premise database.
Right.
Which is pretty neat. And it will also allow you to, if you're working on trying to migrate your database to Azure, that's a pretty seamless way to do it, because now you can just basically, on your own terms, you can put your database in Azure and then play around with it, see if you're happy with how it's doing in managed instance, and then eventually just migrate all your connections there, and then boom, you've got you're migrated to Azure, which is pretty slick. It's a pretty great way to do it. Because you have a lot of pre-warning and opportunities to play around with it without a big overhead or a lot of downtime. Yeah.
Could you say more on the ledger feature? I know I heard about it, but I wasn't too sure.
Right. So yeah, ledger is basically a way to keep track. If you've got multiple parties trying to write to a database or interact with your database, it leverages what's Bob Ward said, the power of the blockchain to keep track of it and monitor that data integrity as it flows into your system, so that you can then use that for audits or data tracking, and you can do all this securely by just it's sort of built in, right? So pretty great. I don't think that I would want to have to implement that myself, so it's pretty cool that that we can just do it.
So is it another form of audit, like in addition to what we already have?
So it can streamline audits.
Okay.
So it can support that by providing that sort of detail and integrity verification, right? It can streamline an audit. It won't do an audit. It will just provide that information. I don't know that it does an audit, but it will. It supports that.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
So I'm interested in when you're doing your development, what language do you develop in? What tools do your developers use? I mean, how do you do the work on SQL Server to build it?
It's so cool. So I've only worked in mostly on the sort of the way SQL is delivered and worked on. There's obviously different components to every big software project, and I've mostly worked in the sort of in the core SQL engine, which is where the query optimizer is, which is great because you make a change there and then it gets shipped to everywhere we ship the product, which is so cool.
Right.
And that, I mean, that code as it's been around for a while.
I'm sure.
So you're saying it's COBOL? That'll
It's been around for a while. For me, it took me some time to adjust to working in that environment. But we've got a pretty streamlined, process for writing tests that exercise things, and it's a pretty cool environment. Yeah,
I bet.
So what does a typical day look like in a PM's life?
Let's see. There's a lot of meetings, which is great. I love interfacing with people and interacting with people. It's one of the reasons I was gravitated to do this role. So
if I can ask, is it kind of like a product owner and an agile? Are you the product owner and like work the backlog and user stories and that type of stuff?
It's just sort of, it's this weird hybrid between a couple of different types of things. It's very deeply technical, but it's also, you know, very connected to our users and the people that we interact with. So, you know, a typical day would be something like meeting with my teams that are delivering new features and checking in with them on status, updating on anything that they need to know in terms of what our timelines are, you know, what are our blockers, what do they need from me, what if we're in a preview phase, what kind of customer feedback are we getting that we can leverage, where do we have bugs that we need to address. To even in the earlier phases, it's even, you know, you just talk to the team and you say, what are we going to deliver and what's this going to look like, right? That's the most exciting part of the job for me, is to define what the feature is and how it's going to work and envision that sort of really high level picture of how all the pieces are going to fit together. Another part of the job is meeting with customers and talking to them about, how are you enjoying the product? How's it working for you? What's working? What's not working? How can we, you know, support you? Or you know, are the features that we are trying to deliver doing what we expected that they would do for you? Or are they not? And if not, let's talk about why. So, you know, that's part of it. And then there's another, I don't know, it's just a cool job. There's a part of it where you get to write documentation and work on blogs and presentations, and it's just really fun. Yeah, it's my take.
Do you have any like upcoming features that you can tell us about?
Well, I can tell you about features that have already been announced.
Okay, right? Yes.
So Query Store for secondary replicas is one that I'm delivering that is amazing. So we didn't talk about Query Store improvements too much.
Right. We should, yeah.
But Query Store for secondary replicas, basically, if you have Query Store, all right, is a feature that allows, when you are running a workload against a database, it records that workload and will allow you to do performance analysis and see if there's changes over time or what's working, what's not working, etc. in your workload. And we have only allowed that recording and all of that tracking to happen for queries against a primary replica, right? So so if you have any sort of secondary replicas connected in any form, we don't track those workloads because we can't write to that database. Query Store is basically written as a set of tables that live in the database, and we can't write to that database. It's a secondary, it's read only. So now we are actually sending messages back to the primary to record that information about secondary workloads, and so that you'll be able to tweak your secondary workload in addition to your primary workload.
That's pretty amazing. Yep.
Yeah.
We use a lot of Query Store where I work, and it's been a total game changer.
Yeah, it's an awesome feature. So yeah.
Any other features?
I mean, well, memory grant feedback, we talked about that a little bit. We're making that's a feature that's already been delivered in other forms, and we're just continuing to iterate and improve upon what it does. Right. So I memory grant feedback now. Before, it basically what it does is it remembers how much memory your query actually needed, so that next time when we compile and run it, we adjust that grant of memory for the query so that we're more likely to be accurate to what the query actually needs. Now, I think we all know that the problem that can happen when you run a query with too little memory is that it can spill to disk. And like your query is just like all of a sudden walking through like thigh deep through mud, right? It's really not easy, not fast, right? And so the queries, the memory grant feedback will learn over time how to get that right. Now, the features that we're delivering in SQL 22 aim to do two things. One is to not just look at the most recent execution of a query, but more of the history. So if your query usage is spiking up and down, it will adjust to basically the goal is prevent spills, right? So, you know, we would much rather give a query more memory than it needs than have it spill the disk. The other thing we're doing is right now, if you've, before this improvement is if you flush your plain cache or the query gets evicted from cache, you lose that learning that you spent that time doing. One, but we can now persist it in the query store, and then next time we can just look up in the query store what's the memory grant that this query needs, and just use that from square one instead of relearning, which is pretty cool.
That is very cool.
Yes.
So those are my two big features that I personally am delivering for SQL 22.
That's super cool.
I agree.
And what's the timeline for getting those released?
All of the timelines for SQL 22 is going to be released in 2022. And so,
okay, sometime this year. Okay.
At least that's what I can say.
About how long does it usually take from conception of an idea for a feature to
that's a great question, yeah,
and getting it out into the wild where people can use it?
Well, so that is a great question. I think it really.
I wonder where Mala went. That's obviously why the recording ended. I'm sure she will edit herself back in. Well, this is super cool. Are there any other changes coming up to the intelligent query processing?
Oh, I think I've talked about them all.
Or did we talk about changes to that? I knew we talked about it a little bit. I wasn't sure if we talked about.
I think we got the big bits of it.
Big changes. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the coolest part of your job? Like, what do you like the best about what you do?
My favorite part is when you're right at the beginning of a feature and you're saying, okay, we want to deliver something to solve this problem, right? And you've established that this is a problem that needs to be solved, and it's a problem that you can solve, and then you get to talk about
sorry about that. I don't know. My internet crapped out. Sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. I picked up the recording and we're
keeping going.
We're pushed on through. I'd asked Kate what the coolest part of her job, what the thing she likes the most about her job is.
And it's that part where you come up with these plans of like, when this all delivers, this is what it's going to look like. And here's how these features are going to work together. And here's how it's all going to work to, that part is just, that's my favorite part, is that sort of vision part where you get to really steer the direction of the product and envision what it could do for customers. That's my favorite.
I always went into every day when I was working in an environment where I was building stuff, that my goal every day was to make it easier for somebody else to do their job. And
right.
if I could build a query that saved somebody, 10 hours of work every week, well, that's a whole lot of hours every week that I'm saving.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so looking at, that type of mentality of,
seeing the world one query at a time.
Yes. Or, whatever it is, one report.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
And in fact, my motto was, I can't change the world, but I can change someone's world. I can make the world a better place for that one person to really make their job easier or more efficient, or give them time to do stuff that's, you know, more meaningful to the organization.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing I love about query processing, right? Is if you have a query that without any sort of optimization or whatever, right, it makes the difference between a query that runs for days or doesn't complete to it ran in like 30 seconds, right?
Yes, it is, man. Boom, mind blowing. You're like, holy cow, it totally works.
So I want to ask this because, you know, a lot of people, especially we hear it from women all the time. How do you keep yourself from being, I'm sure working at Microsoft, you're surrounded by a ton of like very smart people. So how do you keep yourself grounded? Like, you know, you don't get into any imposter syndrome or anything of that nature. What is your strategy for just staying who you are amidst all these exceptionally smart people?
Oh, well, I mean, I think for me, one of the things that has helped for me is to find the right niche for myself, right? So I can have my own place where I feel, you know, I'm solid and confident in my knowledge and my background and what I have to bring to the table. You know, yeah, that's that's an interesting question. You know, how do I stay, I mean, how do you stay grounded in that environment? You know, I know my own self and I know what I can do. And I try to surround myself with people who also see that, right? See what I'm capable of and see what I can do. And when you're in an environment or a team that doesn't see that, or that's not, that connection isn't happening, it's good to find the right people.
I like to think, you know, I'm smarter than the average bear. I mean, you know, just a little. And there was one company that I really kind of wanted to work for, but like everybody there was super, super smart. And I was like, I would feel like an average bear if I went and worked there. And I need to feel a little bit better about myself. So I'm not going to go work there. They're all too smart for me.
That's totally true, right? I think there are some people, or sometimes in your career, when you go, you know what? Do I want to be a big fish in a little pond, or do I want to be a little fish in a big pond?
Big pond, yeah.
You
Right?
know what I've learned working with a lot of very smart people too, where I work, and I often get into that imposter syndrome, I'll freely admit. But you know, nobody knows everything. I remember Paul Rantle saying once that there are things that he doesn't know about SQL Server, and somehow people seem to assume that he knows every part of it, everything. So there is something that everybody doesn't know. Maybe I might know something that that person doesn't know, and there is no such thing as somebody who knows everything. So to me, that has been helpful. Yeah,
you're onto something there. If you can find an area, even if it's a small area, to become that sort of resident expert in that area,
right.
then you're that go-to person for that thing, and then you build that respect and you build that reputation,
right?
And you can totally build on that. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. No, I personally, I like being surrounded by a lot of people that I can learn from. Right.
Yeah, me too.
I am right now in my career, and in sort of myself, if that makes any sense, right? I want
sure, absolutely.
In that place where I'm ready. I could also, there have been times in my life when I was really not prepared for that, and I would have been much happier to be a big fish in a small pond and just not have anybody challenging me. But you know, that all changes with time and where you are in your life too. So.
That's me too. I worked at a place, more than one place, in fact, where I was the one who knew everything, the go-to person, and it was fun for some time. After a while, I figured I'm not learning anything here. Nobody's challenging me, and no, everybody's like, okay, you know. And in a way, it even became a bit of a burden. It's like, okay, you know, you ask her. It's like it's not on them to learn anything. You know, you're the one person who's learning and figuring everything out. So those places somehow, you know, as I got older, it started getting to me a little bit. Although it can be, you know, depending on where you are in life, it can be a comfortable, secure place to be as well. Sometimes.
Yeah, I think sometimes too, though, that when you're that lone wolf by yourself and you know everything, you don't ever like really learn anything new.
Exactly.
You don't have anybody to bounce ideas off of or talk about different plans or whatever. it's your way, and maybe you're not doing it right and you don't know because there's
Right.
nobody else to talk to.
Right.
Which was one of the things about the in-person conferences that's so nice is, you're just sitting in a session and you learn something and you say something to the person next to you. Then you go out in the hall and you talk, and you just get like this whole thing that's going to change your whole life at work because you came and you met this person and they know something that you don't know.
Right. No, now you have colleagues like Erin and Kendra and all of them. They're just about the most amazing people you want to have, work with. And there's so many things you can learn from them. I love both of them.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And Erin is such a brilliant person on Query Store too. We've learned so much from her blog posts and talking to her. Yeah.
We're very much excited to have her part of the team and to be able to be able to tell all so that she can give us all the feedback right away instead of waiting until we can talk about it with her.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite thing to do outside of being a program manager at Microsoft?
I mean, I guess my goal in life is to spend as little time as possible sitting in front of a computer, which is,
Yes.
I ended up in the line of work I'm in, but here I am. And so, I'm fortunate that I live in a place in my town where I've got wooded walking trails and woods just out my front door. I go out there.
Where do you live?
I live in the Puget Sound area in Washington.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It's just a beautiful place to live.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times if I, even if I have a meeting that I need to call into, and when you're sitting in front of a screen, I think maybe we've all hit this pattern. You're sitting in front of a screen, you're called into a meeting, but you're not actively participating, and you zone out and you start, looking at other stuff you need to get done. Like, well, that was a productive hour for all my other stuff, but I didn't actually get anything from being in a meeting. Well, if you really want to focus, sometimes the best thing to do is put in the headphones and hit the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm out and I can focus because there's nothing else. There's no other,
Distractions.
interfering. And I'm able to really be present in a meeting. As long as I don't have to share my screen or
Because usually what happens is, you're not paying attention. You're over on your other computer doing something, and then you hear your name, and you're like, oh no, what did I miss? Because I haven't heard the last 5 minutes, and now they're going to want me to talk about something.
Or you're talking and you don't even notice that you're on mute, especially. Why is nobody hearing me? I'm saying something.
I found it's a great way to attend meetings that are mostly presentation. So, I mean, in the summer, in the Seattle area, I like to go sailing. I like to take
It's beautiful.
sailing.
Yeah.
It's the thing that I found that I love to do with my best friend. We both have kids. We take the kids, we put them on the boat. It's a wild time and it's so much fun. So yeah, it's stuff like that, I guess I recently started a hobby that I'm learning how to do, like weightlifting, like real weightlifting, which is
nice.
really
That's cool. Yeah. It's good for your joints too. Women, weightlifting is very good as you get older. Yeah.
Exactly.
So anything else?
I mean, I think you've got it. That's me.
Are you on social media if people want to reach you?
I am not really.
Okay. No, you don't have to be. I mean, just. But you're on LinkedIn though.
I am on LinkedIn. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, we'll include a link to your LinkedIn, and you said you had a blog. So if you let us know what's your blog, we'll include that too in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah, it's the SQL Server blog. I just put posts up there about features that I'm learning about.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It's really fun.
All right, then. Thank you, Kate, for your time. We really appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
If you know any other cool women that would like to come and sit and chat with us.
Yes.
Please pass them along to us. We would like to talk to them too.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. We'll do that.
Thank you. And thank you for your time. This was great.